Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night we talked about the people and how throughout our 8,000 years of recorded history, 8,000 years out of 2.5 billion years that you and I have actually been on this earth, how all during the time of our recorded history, we human beings are forever dividing ourselves from each other. In other words, my tribe are people. You're not of my tribe, therefore you are not people. Therefore I can eat you. It's the same thing. We do that today. Since you are not a part of my tribe and my tribe are people, then you are not people and we can do anything we want to you. We can eat you. Every tribal name throughout our history, no matter what nation you're in, no matter what state, no matter what the language spoken is, the name of that tribe, that gang, that group, in their own language comes down to mean the people. It means that we are people and everyone else is not. And of course our masters have that same outlook on us. We are not the masters, whomever or whatever the masters are. And since we are not them, and they are people, that means that you and I are not people. It means that you and I are cattle. And because of this same concept, you and I as human beings, we separate, we isolate ourselves from each other. And our masters also know that we do this, and they use that to our advantage. It's called divide and conquer. And it's a concept our masters have down to a science. In the United States, for example, our masters have learned that if they turn women against men, and men, in their own self-defense, then turn against women, you don't have a society. You have nothing. You have chaos and hatred and confusion and horror. You can't have a society. It's hard to have a society, to have a culture where women actively hate men. And women in the United States blame men for all the things that have been done to them by the American society. Now, the fact that the United States and Great Britain are controlled, owned outright by two women, Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands and Queen Elizabeth of England, and they are the final authority on the laws and what passes for laws in our countries, means nothing to anyone. The fact that men in these countries have been living through the exact same experiences in the workplace, in society, that women are experiencing. I know from personal experience. I've been working since I was 5 years old. And I've tried to explain this numerous times to women, and of course was ignored because I appear white, and I'm male, and I'm single, and therefore that's the definition of the enemy to the people of the United States. No, it's not true, of course, but there you have it. I personally have lost many jobs because I refused to have sex with my boss, whether it was male or female. For example, when I was at NASA at Caltech for 5 years, I lost my job because I refused to have sex with my female boss. And when I tried to file charges against her at the ombudsman's office on the campus of Caltech, an office which was entirely staffed by women, the woman in charge told me to forget it. No one would believe me and nobody would care. When a man claims sexual discrimination in the workplace, he's just laughed at. And that's just how it's set up. And she basically told me, forget it. She herself was quitting the job because she was disgusted by all of it. She said I was wasting my time. She said if I do this, it would be for just to have it on record in case this creature did it to anyone else. But things did begin to change in the United States as I was fleeing in 2007. Younger women were turning away from the concepts of hate, but by then it was just too late for me. I was in Los Angeles, I was in South Pasadena, California. I was heading to Nashville, Tennessee for a 6-month job there at Smyrna, Tennessee. And two very beautiful women, young, beautiful women, were actually being nice to me. And by then, I was so burned out. I was so tired. I was just done. I just couldn't face it again. So the question really comes down to, we segregate ourselves from ourselves. Why? Our masters know this about us and use it to turn us against each other with what amounts to, well, frankly, a black magic satanic sense of humor. Demon worshippers really like to rub it in our faces what they're doing to us, and they think it's funny. It's their version of comedy. For example, the Jews, our masters tell us, are the chosen people. But our masters did not bother to mention that the Jews were the chosen people for a specific reason. Our masters have set the Jews up to be the fall guy in our masters' war against the human race. And the Jewish people are going to take all the blame for that because our masters pretend to be Jewish. They're not. But the Jewish people get blamed for everything that our masters do. The Aryan race, our masters tell us, are the master race. But what they didn't mention to us, again, this is black magic satanic humor, black magic comedy, I suppose. The truth of the matter is that our masters prefer white-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde human beings. Not because they are genetically superior to any other race on the planet, but because they taste good. And no, I'm not laughing. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. The greatest fear our masters have is that you and I will wake up. We'll wake up from our food additive-induced comas and see our masters for what they really are. Our masters are the monster under the bed. At best, they are nothing. At worst, they are parasites. But if we should happen to stand together as one people against our masters, and our masters know this, our masters would be gone in a day. They would simply vanish from the face of the earth because 7 billion really ticked off human beings, standing on their own 2 hind feet, on their own 2 legs, standing up as men and women and not down on all fours, scrounging in the mud like cattle. Our masters are afraid of that. They live in fear of that on a daily basis. I've seen that with my own eyes, up close and personal. They remember, our masters, they remember the French Revolution like it was yesterday. Now, see, the problem is, since if we stand together as 7 billion people, as one tribe, well, human nature says we have to have a name. Human beings are really big on naming things, including themselves. So I'm thinking, how about we call our race of people, just a thought, how about we call our tribe the human race? I think it's kind of catchy. And speaking of humor, I thought tonight we would chat about how long can you tread water? Now in my 52 years, 53 years of being on this world, I can count the number of happy moments I've had in this life on the fingers of one hand when it came to human beings, well, to women. I can count on the fingers of the other hand 3 highlights of my existence here, 3 bright points of light in my time as a child, if I was ever a child. The first was a TV show called Star Trek, the original series. The other was a little television show from England called Doctor Who. And it was on these 2 television shows. You know, you got Star Trek Thursday nights at 8:30, and you could always find it. But Doctor Who was harder to find. It was played on PBS stations randomly as filler, so you just accidentally come across a Doctor Who episode playing every once in a while, and I was just amazed. 2 totally different concepts of shows, but wonderful storytelling. Really intelligent storytelling. But on these 2 television shows, it was the only place in my entire life that I saw people being nice to one another. On these two television shows, it was the only place I actually saw that intelligence had value. Intelligence was important, rather than rewarding cruelty and stupidity as the height of human achievement. And it's because of these two television shows that I actually survived as long as I have survived. So I personally know that television can be a force for good. It was the only place where I ever learned about kindness or love or compassion or any kind of value of human decency. In the same context, technology is supposed to make our lives better. Technology is supposed to improve our world. But our masters, as they do with everything they touch, they turn to filth. Our masters have turned technology against us and made it something nasty and mean and small, just like they are. If you have any doubt of this, watch a TV interview with Dick Cheney and turn the sound off and just watch his face. He's really the epitome of what our masters are. But anyway, the three highlights of my time as a child: Star Trek, the original series, Doctor Who. And the third highlight was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Bill Cosby. Mr. Bill Cosby was a comedian. And I had at the time several record albums of Mr. Bill Cosby's comedy routines, which I cherished and would not let go of for any reason. And every single time I would play one of these record albums, I was on the floor. No matter how many times I heard it, I was on the floor, doubled over laughing. Really, really, really great comedian, Mr. Bill Cosby. And I was thinking the other night about one of his routines where God was talking to Noah. And God is trying to convince Noah to build an ark. And of course, Noah thinks it's a gag. His neighbors are, funning him. It's highly brilliant. It's a classic comedy routine, and I highly recommend you go online to YouTube or Amazon and download yourself a copy. Truly classic comedy. So God, in the comedy routine, God is asking Noah, "So, how long can you tread water?" But I was thinking about this wonderful comedian and how his comedy routines brightened my day, just as Star Trek and Doctor Who taught me that intelligence was a good thing, and being kind to others was not weakness, and that cruelty was not necessary for any reason. But in being reminded of Mr. Bill Cosby's treading water comedy sketch, I thought to myself, have you and I ever just walked through the concept of what the event, whatever it will be, have we ever just walked through what the event will mean to you and me? And I, in advance, apologize to Mr. Bill Cosby for using his wonderful work as a basis of my rather horrible review of our near future. But I just can't think of another way of expressing this concept. The reality is, no matter what form the event is going to take, it seems to be here now. And again, it's presenting itself in a way that I never thought about. Right now, and you can look this up online, all over the world people are hearing sonic booms. But they cannot see anything in the sky. There's no planes, there's no jets, there's no nothing. Now my guess, that's all it is a guess, is that pieces of rock, little pieces of rock, have started to rain down out of the sky, a lot more than normal. And since they are very small, they burn up in the atmosphere, way, way up in the sky before hitting the ground. But as they get hotter and hotter and hotter, these little bits of rock start to explode. And that's the sound that people are hearing. Because as far as I understand it, these little bits of junk rotate around our solar system, which means that the dead brown dwarf star with its 3 planets must also carry little bits of junk with it as it travels. And so, naturally enough, it's the smallest bits that precede it on its travel through the plane of our solar system. Now, on our world, also, all the worlds in our solar system have been experiencing the effects of this dead brown dwarf star, getting closer to the plane of our solar system. For example, our planet is heating up. The poles are melting, which is actually quite festive for the polar bears since they enjoy some warm weather, and they're breeding like rabbits. Bears are breeding like rabbits. That's a good one. Well, it turns out that Venus and Mars are also getting warmer. And no amount of talk can convince me that someone driving an SUV on the planet Earth can actually warm the north and south poles of the planet Mars. So it's going to be electrical induction. And since the universe is electrical, and you and I are electrical, and the planet we live on is electrical, and a foreign object, which also is electrical, is entering in the plane of our solar system, there's going to be a little warming. It's the same process that your heating pad under your pillow uses. It's heat by electrical induction. So our planets in our solar system are warming up. And now, 40 years later, the time that I've been actively aware of this, our masters are now admitting that there's a dead brown dwarf star. And they're using their own news agencies, CNN and BBC. They've admitted that there is a dead brown dwarf star out there, and it's very close. They, of course, cannot agree. CNN says it's outside the orbit of Pluto, while the BBC says it's already inside the plane of our solar system. Either way, it's approaching the Earth from our southern pole. It's coming up from beneath us. This is why the Vatican, in my opinion, the Catholic Church, built a telescope all of their own called Lucifer at the South Pole and had been watching something approach. Now, I spent 5 years at NASA. I'm not a scientist. I'm just, a tech guy, a PR guy, those sort of things. But I watched scientists very closely for 5 years, worked with them on a daily basis, and I know quite a lot of things that they do. And part of the scientific practice, especially amongst astronomers, is they visit each other at their different telescopes around the world. They go, they look at the sky, they party. But for some reason, the Catholic Church will not allow any astronomers inside of their facility at the South Pole. Again, this is very bizarre, that there is a camaraderie amongst scientists, amongst astronomers. They visit each other. They openly share their data. But not so with the Lucifer telescope in the South Pole. No one's been allowed to go in there at all. Now, people in New Zealand have been seeing a red dot in the sky, the southern sky, for several years now. And New Zealand is just about as far south as you can get without actually, dating a penguin. And you can't really get that far south unless you're all, in New Zealand or Argentina or Chile. Another interesting thing happened. It's now September 2011. An interesting thing happened a month or two ago. The head of NASA issued a message to all NASA employees. And you can find this video on YouTube. It's very bizarre. And here's the head of NASA warning his employees to be prepared for a major disaster. Just sort of a generic, put the wagons into a circle, the Indians are attacking sort of a thing. But it doesn't say who, what, where, when, why, or how. The things we chatted about last night. So what will really happen? I don't know for certain. All I'm fairly certain of is going to change everything we know about our world. It seems to break down into two major possibilities. Either we'll be flipped or the South Pole will melt. So the first possibility is that the dead brown dwarf star, which is a dead sun, it's a sun that never actually lit. It's basically that one charcoal briquette on your barbecue that no matter how hard you try, it just won't light. It just sort of turns brown and sits there and does nothing. That's basically what a dead brown dwarf star is. There's just something in it. It's just not big enough to actually come to life and do its job and be a sun. It just sort of died on the barbecue. But the thing is big. It's much bigger than our Earth. And again, because the universe is electrical in nature, there's going to be a short circuit between the planets as this dead brown dwarf star passes through the plane of our solar system. It will pass between our Earth and our Sun. Now that short circuit will cause planetary lightning. Basically, the solar system is going to short out, and there's going to be electrical arcing between the various planets. If you look at pictures of Mars, you can see the scorching on the surface of Mars. It's really upsetting. Now, the other place you can find evidence of these bolts of lightning leaping from planet to planet are in cave paintings. Go to any civilization on the planet. You can go to Australia, you can go to Germany, you can go to South America, and you can find cave paintings. And these cave paintings depict, outside of the cave, lightning raining down on the earth like water. And the people at that time hid in the caves. This is why, of course, in the United States, going into a cave is a federal offense and you go to prison, because our masters have already basically stolen every cave system, made their own cave systems, built their underground cities. And way up in the mountains, they've left some of their troops guarding the front door, so if you want to make a run for the mountains, you're out of luck. It's because the universe is electrical in nature, and because each planet, each moon, carries its own unique electrical charge. And because electricity generates a magnetic field, electricity, magnetism, gravity are all the same thing. They're all the same, I don't know, power. When it's just not certain all the time how those three things come together. But because the universe is electrical, and each body, each planet, each moon carries an electrical charge, it also means it carries a magnetic charge. And since the dead brown dwarf star is a lot bigger than we are, as it passes between the Earth and the Sun, it's going to cause the Earth to flip end for end. It's like putting a backspin on a billiard ball. Now, the Earth's magnetic field, and you can look this up online, the Earth's magnetic field has been going down, has been reducing for the last couple thousand years. And as far as I know, the only way you can cause a magnet to lose its potential is to put an even bigger magnet near it. Again, you can look this up online. So for the last 1,000 years, the magnetic field of the Earth has been going down. 1,000 years ago, it was 4.0 Gauss. Today, it's barely 0.04 Gauss. And no, I don't know what a Gauss is. You'll have to look it up. And even now, even as you and I are chatting about this here and now, the Earth is already in the process of flipping. True north, where Santa Claus hangs out, and magnetic north, the magnetic charge, the magnetic potential of the planet, are moving away from each other faster and faster, especially over the last few years. And again, you can look this up online. Major international airports have been forced, because of this, to repaint their runways. On all major international runways, they paint the compass headings that those runways are facing, so that pilots can be certain they're landing on the correct runway. That's pretty obvious. You can look that one up yourself. So what happens if the Earth does flip end for end? Well, there's an ice sheet that covers Antarctica, the South Pole. Now, in places, this ice sheet is 5,000 feet thick. And if you look at a globe of the map, go down to the local stationery store or the local library and look at a globe of the map and just turn the globe over. Antarctica is always hidden underneath. Compare the size of the ice sheet with North America and Western Europe. The amount of ice at the South Pole is bigger than North America and Western Europe combined. So let's say, for the sake of argument, the Earth is a billiard ball, and there's ice at the bottom of the billiard ball. Let's say you flip the billiard ball with your hand. Well, chances are that ice is going to be left behind. Ice is kind of slippery. So if the Earth flips end for end, which will happen relatively fast, I'm sorry to say, suddenly that ice at the South Pole will find it has nothing to stand on. That ice, 5,000 feet thick and bigger than North America and Western Europe combined, will suddenly be surprised and say, oops, there's nothing underneath me but open water. I'm going to fall now. Actually, have you ever dropped an ice cube into a full glass of water? The water has to go somewhere. And since the ice is, well, sort of solid, it's going to take up the place where that water used to be. And the ice is not going to move too fast. So what's going to happen is when you drop that ice cube into a full glass of water, the water is going to lose. And it's going to leap out of your glass, spilling all over the place. The same thing is going to happen at the South Pole. Suddenly all that water is going to have to go somewhere because that ice is suddenly going to drop down. And that much ice, well, it's going to create a wave. And that wave is going to be really pissed off. It's going to be moving very fast. And as it moves faster and faster, as it picks up speed, it's going to, well, gather momentum, they will say. It's going to get very tall very, very quickly. All you have to do is stand on the beach and watch waves coming in during a storm. Way, way out, not much of a wave. Can barely notice it. But as it gets closer to land, it gets bigger and bigger and taller and faster. Having been flipped end for end myself on numerous occasions by the ocean at the beach, I know how that feels. How tall will this wave get? Well, we're talking about an awful lot of water moving really, really fast. So for the sake to answer that question, let's look at an ancient city. Well, it's not actually a city. It's actually a field of stones that someone built a very long time ago, thousands of years ago at least. It's got to be that old because the Roman Empire, the Romans found it. And they built a city on it. It's the largest Roman city in the world, and it's not in Rome. It's in Lebanon, in a valley, up 5,000 feet in the mountains. Now we're talking about 1 million square feet of solid stones. And each of these stones is so big, you and I, our technology, we have no idea how they could have been cut or moved, let alone put into place to create a flat field of stones 1 million square feet in size. I mean, this platform is so impressive and so stable and so strong. The Romans actually built their largest city on top of it. You can go there. It's in a place called Baalbek in Lebanon. And you'll find it up in the valley, 5,000 feet up in the mountains. And you can see whoever built the stone platform, you can see where they got their stone. Just go to the other end of the valley and you can see where they were chiseled out of the mountain. Now the interesting thing about these stones, some of them weigh about 2,500 tons. Imagine, for example, your car weighs 2,500 pounds, 1 ton. Well, it would be really, really hard to move your car if it weighs 1 ton. You couldn't do it yourself. Now, imagine 25 cars, all the same size, stacked one on top of the other. Now it's a really good bet that you couldn't move that. So imagine now 100 cars stacked on top of your car. That's a lot of weight, and that's not even how much one of these stones weighs all by itself. You'd actually have to take your car and stack it until there's 2,500 of your cars all standing on top of each other. That's how much weight we're talking about in one individual stone that's in this platform, way up in the mountains at a place called Baalbek in Lebanon. Somehow, whoever built this platform, carved these stones, weighing thousands of tons, moved them from one end of the valley to the other end of the valley, built the platform, and nobody knows how it was done or why. You and I, with all our technology, we can't do it. Haven't a clue. But the reality is it's there, and it's been there for a very long time. Now, the reason I'm making such a big deal about how big and strong and unmoving and impossible Baalbek is because way up in the mountains of Lebanon, way up there, 5,000 feet above sea level, there's this immovable platform of stones. And it has a watermark. It has a mark on the stones where lots of water once was, and where it had to stay for a very long time. It's hard to mark stones with water like that. And this is a valley we're talking about. This is not a dish in the mountains. This is a valley. So not only was the water sitting in the valley, it was sitting outside of the valley at 5,000 feet. So to answer the question, how tall will the wave from the South Pole be? Well, a wave created by dropping all that ice that was sitting on top of the South Pole suddenly into the water, well, it would have to have been at least 5,000 feet tall. Or it was moving so fast that it reached the ancient stone platform at Baalbek and sat there at the 5,000 foot level long enough for it to leave a watermark on the stone platform at Baalbek. Now, of course, the problem is most of the cities of our world, major cities, are built on the coast. None of them are built of stone. It's a safe bet to say that they'll all be gone. Now, there are cities in our world, major cities. Mexico City will survive. It's way up in the mountains. But right now, our masters in the United States have been supplying guns to the Mexican drug lords to cause war. Now, this has been reported even in the mainstream newspapers, which in itself is very odd. And so here our masters are, from the United States government, trying to destroy the Mexican government. Now, why are they doing that? First, the U.S. government supplies guns to the Mexican drug lords. They cause a problem. The next thing our masters do is they offer the assistance of the U.S. government to the Mexican government to stop this horrible, horrible thing that the Mexican drug lords now have all these very, very powerful weapons, and lots of them. The very same weapons the United States government supplied them. So the United States government created chaos and war inside of Mexico and now is invading Mexico to help stop it. Why? I have no idea. So Mexico City is out of my list of places where I want to be. Now there are other smaller cities in the mountains that will survive. I mean Denver, Colorado. Now I've been to Denver, Colorado. I had a NASA convention at Estes Park, Colorado once, and I have to admit we flew into Denver and we flew out of Denver, and it's the creepiest place I've ever been in the States. And I've been in some pretty creepy places. Probably it was creepy to me because Denver, Colorado is just filled to capacity on the surface and under the ground with U.S. military bases. Again, a really creepy place, but that's just me. So that's the first possibility. We just flip end for end. The second possibility is that these little bits of rock that have been raining down on our planet will continue to rain down on our planet, but there'll be more and more of them. And as the dead brown dwarf star gets closer to us, those little bits of rock are going to get bigger. And the bigger these rocks are, the more likely they will survive the fall through our atmosphere, which makes them really hot. They're big enough, actually, to survive until they hit something. It would either hit you, hit me, or just hit the Earth. So these bits of rock are going to get bigger and bigger. And they're going to be really hot. Burning rock falling out of the sky. And since the dead brown dwarf star is approaching us from below us, from our southern pole, those rocks will be mostly falling in the southern hemisphere, which means They're going to be raining down on the ice sheet that covers the South Pole. And if enough of those burning rocks fall out of the sky, and they're big enough, and there are enough of them, or if you only get one that's, say, the size of a football field, that ice sheet's going to start melting. As I say, if there's one big enough, it'll melt really fast. So again, what does that mean to you and me? Well, it means that instead of the ice suddenly falling into the ocean because the land is no longer underneath it and it goes, oops, which would cause, of course, a huge wave, what it would mean instead is that the ice will melt and it'll sort of slowly drain into the ocean. Sort of slowly means geysers and torrents of water flooding into the ocean very, very quickly. Not as quickly as a flipping of the planet, but quick enough that you and I would notice it. So what will that do to sea levels? Sea levels are going to go up. So imagine let's say you're in Los Angeles, and the water in the ocean starts to rise. What does this mean to you? Well, just for fun, find a tall building, get into the elevator, get into the lift, and go up to the 12th floor. Now, I'm not an architect, but I'm guessing that if you find an outside window and stand there and look out over the city, where your toes are would be about 300 feet above the ground. Again, you can look this up for yourself. I'm just guessing. But just imagine you're standing there on the 12th floor, and imagine that where your toes are is where the new sea level is going to be, where the ocean will be very, very soon. Now, look out the window, look down. What's going to be covered by the water? Well, all the roads will be covered. Any houses in the valleys below you, in the basin. In Los Angeles is built in a basin, which is surrounded by a little row of hills, which is surrounded by a mountain range, which is surrounded by another mountain range. So if you're behind the second mountain range, you'd be okay, but if you're in the basin, you're pretty much just facing the ocean. And any houses down there, covered. Electrical wires will be buried, in water, so no electricity. No fresh water will get into the city because any water you pump in is just going to go right into the ocean. The sewers will be open to flow upwards towards the surface. The grocery stores will be covered. The gasoline stations will be covered. Pretty much it'll all be covered with water. So let's say you're just standing there and you can watch as the water levels rise. And you say, I got to get out of here. Because normally people seeing the water rise think it's fun, and they go down and they take pictures and take the kids down at the beach and say, "Ooh, isn't this fun? The water's getting higher." So pretty good bet. The 98% of the human race will go down at the beach and watch the water level rise. You, being hopefully the last 2%, will say, "Oh, gotta go." You start driving inland. Problem is, even the 98% of our people who are cattle and can barely walk and talk at the same time, they will eventually get the idea that, ooh, the water's getting higher. Ooh, we probably better get out of here. At that point, it means that you and 30 million other people who live in the Los Angeles basin, again, the city of Los Angeles sits in a basin at the foot of mountains, locked tight up against the sea. What are you all going to do? Well, you're going to get into your cars and get on the freeway and go nowhere. I mean, at the best of times, the Los Angeles freeways are blocked. But when everyone tries to leave Los Angeles at exactly the same time, no one's going to get out. I mean, you won't even be able to get into the valley, which is the first little area above the basin where this little row of hills, maybe 100-foot elevation above the sea. Now, all this time, you'll be able to see those seawater rising. It might rise slow enough that you can walk away from it. You might. If you can find a place to drive, you might actually be able to drive away from it. But again, there's going to be you and millions of other people in your city who will all have the same idea at the same time. Which gets us back to our theme tonight, How long can you tread water? Sadly, not very long at all, and your car was never meant to float. But let's say, again for the sake of argument, you were one of the lucky ones. You got out of town in time, with just the clothes on your back and your wallet in your pocket. What do you do now? Now, FEMA has stated over and over and over again, and again you can look this up online, FEMA has stated that in the event of an emergency, you are on your own. FEMA will not be there to help you. Again, you can look this up online. Let's say for the sake of argument, you happen to have stored away supplies in your own car. You planned ahead. Well, the first thing you can't do is let the local cops, wherever you end up, find out you did this. Because at the exact same time FEMA stated that they will not be there to help you in the event of an emergency, Obama passed a law that says that you will go to prison if you are found hoarding during an emergency. So if FEMA will not help you, and you end up helping yourself, you will go to prison. Now what do you do? Well, you're going to need cash. The ATM machines are not going to work. Why? Well, because all of their internet connections were routed through the major hubs, and the major hubs are in the city you just escaped from. The city that is now under 300 feet of water. Pretty much unlikely the ATM machines will work. Let's say, for the sake of argument, you find a bank that will give you cash. Where will you spend it? Today's supermarkets are just basically storefronts. They have no storage warehouses on site anymore. They depend on a daily delivery by trucks. Trucks that can no longer get to those stores because the roads are underwater. Well, that's okay, because most of the farmland in the coastal United States will be underwater too. Let's say, for the sake of argument, you're lucky enough to belong to Costco. My recommendation. You might stand a chance, but again, you and millions of other people will have the same ideas. Get what you can while you can. And in the back of your mind, there will always be the sight of your city drowning. And so from that point forward in your life, there's going to be a fear of the ocean that's never going to go away. Today, there are tribes in South America that live way at the top of the very highest mountains, and they refuse to come down. Why? Well, because they have the racial memory, the verbal memory passed down from generation to generation. They very clearly remember the last time the earth flipped, the last time the waters rose. They have a clear history from their ancestors who escaped into the mountains. And they today, to this day, live in fear of the ocean. I know how they feel. I vaguely remember, I'm not sure if this is true or not, but I vaguely remember a story where even one of these tribes still had boats. And they kept those boats in really good working condition. And they're tens of thousands of feet up in the mountains. They're prepared. I can't remember if that's true or not, but I have the vague impression I remember reading that somewhere. So anyway, let's again say you're one of the lucky ones. You make it to Costco. You get food and supplies. You even get fuel for your car. Now what? Well, if you're a normal human being, you've just been scared out of your mind by the sight of the ocean swallowing your home and the sight of bodies, drowned people floating for as far as you can see. You're going to head for the mountains. Now, up until now, you've not really seen any cops because, the police are at home. They're taking care of their own families. But the closer you get to real mountains, the more you're going to encounter the military. And they're not going to let you up into the mountains. They're not going to let you into the caves. Why? The U.S. government's already there. It's been there for a very long time. And today, again, it's September 2011. The U.S. government, our masters, have claimed all of the highest mountain ranges for themselves and their servants. And this is a case where the military personnel will shoot you dead if you try to save yourself. So now what? I do not know. How long can you tread water? This is why I fled the United States some time ago, one of many, many reasons. I knew nobody would listen until it was too late, and, not even then. I have friends in the United States who have lost everything. They've lost their jobs. They then lost their homes in foreclosures. They've lost all their belongings. And still to this very day, they will not believe a word I say. To this very day, they will not open their eyes and simply look at the world around them the way it really is. They will not save themselves, no matter what. And I have no idea why. What will you do? You have free will, no matter what our masters say. And anyone who tells you that you do not have free will, that you do not have the right to choose for yourself, they are your enemy, and they hate you. Just turn your back and walk away from them, if I may suggest. All I can really leave you with is a blessing or a hope. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race. Their black magic captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.